The sunlight cascaded through the expansive windows of Terminal B at Crestview International Airport, illuminating a scene of orchestrated chaos as passengers bustled in every direction. Among the crowd was Helen, a woman whose mere presence belied a silent strength she had meticulously crafted over the years. Decked in a simple navy blue windbreaker, faded jeans, and scuffed loafers, she glided through the throng with a calm demeanor that contrasted starkly with the frenetic energy surrounding her. Helen was a reluctant traveler, her heart racing not from the excitement of flying, but from the weight of the judgment she had learned to navigate. As she approached the boarding gate for Flight 302, a rigidly controlled sphere filled with the polished glint of wealth and privilege, glances flickered toward her, some curious, others derisive. Helen held her boarding pass tightly, its pristine print marking her assigned seat in the first-class section. She thought about the journey ahead and the invisible barriers she would face. However, her resolve was stronger than any prejudice she might encounter. When the gate agent, a seasoned attendee named Margaret, scanned her boarding pass, Helen saw something shift in the woman's expression. A flicker of disbelief danced behind Margaret's professional facade as she raised an eyebrow at Helen's attire. Without voicing her thoughts, Margaret stepped aside, allowing Helen to pass. The look in the waiting room turned to whispers and sidelong glances as she confidently strode towards the first-class cabin, a sanctuary typically reserved for the elite few. As she entered, the cabin exuded an air of exclusivity. Plush seats lined the aisle, each draped in rich fabrics that seemed to hum with sophistication. Every detail had been meticulously curated to create an environment that promised luxury and comfort. Yet here was Helen, occupying a space that felt foreign, almost misplaced, against the backdrop of polished suits and designer handbags. A hush fell as she took her place at 1A, and the atmosphere thickened with an unspoken tension. From her vantage point, she could see the flight attendants whispering among themselves, their expressions betraying doubts and assumptions that were still taking shape. The head attendant, Andrea, a veteran of the skies with years of experience, could hardly conceal her skepticism. She hovered closer, glancing at Helen's seat with a frown. "Excuse me, ma'am, but I think there's been a mistake. Are you sure this is your seat?" Her voice was laced with an undertone of authority, an unintentional challenge against Helen's very existence in that posh section. At that moment, the air crackled with unease. Helen, though outwardly unfazed, felt a flutter in her chest, yet she maintained her composure. "I assure you, there's no mistake," she replied, her tone steady, embodying a quiet defiance that cut through the apprehension surrounding them. Around her, the passengers began to stir, their whispers growing louder. A couple seated a few rows back, David and Leah, exchanged skeptical glances. They had anticipated a glamorous flight experience after paying top dollar for their first-class tickets. The realization that a seemingly unassuming woman held an equally privileged spot began to resonate with them, igniting an internal conflict that simmered beneath the surface. Meanwhile, Helen remained planted, her suitcase nestled neatly overhead, a presentation of poise amidst the mounting scrutiny. Andrea, struggling to reconcile her instinctual biases with the reality in front of her, quickly consulted her tablet, summoning renewed authority as she attempted to validate herself against the reality of Helen's presence. "What sort of a lady takes a seat in first class dressed like that?" someone ventured aloud, sparking a domino effect of murmurs that cascaded through the cabin. Helen's face remained serene, but inside, She understood that the scrutiny was more than skin deep. It called into question everything about her identity and worth. As the aircraft taxied down the runway, the tension permeated every corner of the cabin. The flight attendants busied themselves with their usual duties, but Helen's presence had inadvertently injected an unexpected energy in their routine. Each attempt to offer refreshments felt fraught with an underlying question. Who was she really? As the plane ascended into the cloud-strewn sky, a buzzer rang in the cockpit, a red alert flashing wildly across the dashboard, capturing the captain's attention. Dealing primarily with mechanical matters seldom required the mental gymnastics of navigating passenger identities, but today was different. He quickly reviewed the manifest, his brow furrowing as the realization struck him hard. Helen wasn't just any passenger. She was the newly appointed CEO of Crestview Airlines. The atmosphere in the cabin shifted almost instantaneously. The whispers died down, replaced with a palpable haze of shock and urgency. Andrea's earlier doubts evaporated, replaced by an emerging awareness of their collective misjudgments. Stripped of the confidence that came with years of authority, staff members were now tasked with confronting their own biases, which had been laid bare by this singular encounter. In the galley, a junior attendant named Sophie had been observing the unfolding drama, an inner conflict drawing lines not just on the gender divide of the flight crew, but layered deeply within the complex tapestry of equity and inclusion. While Andrea's comments about Helen had long toyed with the notions of decorum, the immediate unveiling of Helen's true identity illuminated everything that had simply been taken for granted. Long after the drinks were served and first-class meals were plated, a quiet reflection settled into the room, permeating through each passenger. David and Leah exchanged thoughtful glances, their earlier judgments dismantling in light of their newly gained understanding. What had once been a surface-driven experience was unraveling layers of complexity that demanded empathy above all. As the flight progressed, the conversations behind closed cockpit doors bore witness to the transformation unearthing a culture that had, until now, thrived on subtle exclusivity. Andrea, along with her crew, faced an uncharted territory, one shrouded in humility and the search for accountability. When the plane touched down gently on the tarmac, the collective silence that followed was laced with the burgeoning realization that Helen's mere presence had sparked a cultural revolution, unfurling within the confines of the airline's rigid pathways. While security protocols webbed around the flight attendants, whispers of a scandal filtered through the terminal, but the video capturing the confrontation catalyzed a movement for substantial reform. Inside the airline's headquarters, the incident inspired heated discussions among senior leaders. They gathered, chins resting thoughtfully upon interlaced fingers, keenly aware that their previous practices regarding service and customer relations had suddenly become terribly obsolete. Helen's challenge to their long-standing behaviors needed to take root, pushing the conversation toward creating an environment that valued every individual without prejudice. The core of their discussions lingered not merely on what had gone wrong, but rather on how to recalibrate their approach to service. Training manuals were revised, and new policies emerged, rectifying the systemic biases that had inadvertently skewed the customer experience. There was no intent to punish the crew for their assumptions. Instead, the focus shifted towards fostering a culture of genuine inclusivity that extended to every member of the airline family. As weeks dissolved into months, each team meeting morphed into avenues of reflective conversation. She understood that the scrutiny was more than skin deep. It called into question everything about her identity and worth. Suggestions flowed as employees found their voices, recounting stories of overlooked identities and battles with invisibility. Helen kept her distance from the spotlight, steering clear of the media frenzy while embarking on a path to uplift those around her. Through her quiet influence, she led training sessions that delved deep into empathy, respect, and the importance of recognizing the richness every individual brought to the table. What began as a prickly encounter escalated into a journey of understanding, where walls around appearances began to crumple and genuine respect flourished in its place. Eventually, within the echo of an airplane's cabin, conversations morphed from speculation to unity. Each moment became an opportunity to affirm dignity, where passengers came to understand more than an assigned seat. They reaped the benefits of a greater narrative, one that intertwined their experiences, breaking down the prejudices that lingered too long in the air. And while flight attendants, including Andrea, took charge of their renewed mission, they found themselves faced with a newfound sincerity in their roles. The gentle kindness they began to practice mirrored the world Helen sought to create, a world where biases ceased to exist in their most destructive forms. As she reflected on the journey from the time of that flight to present day, it became evident that changes sparked by serious moments of introspection ripple through lives in ways that often appear invisible. All those moments of hesitation, the apprehensions about someone's worth based on first glances, had begun to dissolve into open arms, ushering a new era where mutual respect thrived. Thus, Helen continued her work knowing that transformative journeys often resemble the climb up a steep, steady hill, where every step, every small act of defiance, brings about atmospheric shifts, transforming judgments into questions and compassion into the shared humanity that binds us all. The quiet revolution aboard Flight 302 had left its mark, redefining the very ethos of the airline and setting a standard that rippled through every interaction. No longer shackled by superficial judgments, a greater appreciation for identity began to ignite sparks of kindness and solidarity, weaving a rich tapestry of experiences that celebrated the depth of humanity in a world that had once been too quick to judge the surface. Each mundane transaction had evolved into a canvas for unlimited potential, the essence of what true service meant. In conclusion, the narrative emerging from that seemingly ordinary flight had morphed into an eternal lesson, encapsulating the essence of empathy, respect, and the enduring power of transformation. With every altitude achieved, both literally and metaphorically, Helen, through her quiet resolve, ignited a flame that would illuminate paths to understanding for countless travelers to come. As the spirit of change soared, it became a testament to life's intricate fabric, a reminder that everyone deserves to be seen, heard, and valued for who they are, beyond the veil of appearances.